Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing another end of year prep video because this is truly my time to shine. This is like my prime era. I love the end of the year. But today's video is going to be about the 3 different goal setting personalities. So I'm going to describe the 3 different personalities and help you figure out which one you are most like. And then I'm going to give some advice for every personality on how it's better for them to set goals and kind of what they're lacking in their life in general and why they might not be achieving their goals. So very quick little backstory on where these 3 personalities are coming from. I basically just finished a 3-week-long yoga teacher training. I'm officially a certified yoga teacher. After I finished my yoga teacher training, I sat down to start making my Notion templates for my goals because it's something I do at the end of every year. I redo all of my Notion templates and I started creating a template to keep track of all of my goals. And honestly, it's a pretty good template, so I was like, maybe I'll share it online on YouTube with you guys. And I looked at my template and I was just like, this is a very specific way of planning goals that I'm sure does not fit a lot of people. Having just finished my yoga teacher training, my knowledge from that training was still very fresh. And in that training, we spent a lot of time learning about Ayurveda, which is a very ancient science from like 5,000 years ago. And there's this thing in Ayurveda called Doshas, which I'm not going to go too into because that can be a whole separate video. I'm just going to do a very brief summary. But doshas are basically 3 energies or personalities that we all have within us, but we all have them at very different balances. So most people are dominant in one personality more than the other. So using this knowledge, I started thinking, okay, if there's these 3 very different personalities, what do they do when it comes to goal setting? The goal setting process is very different for all 3. And I started looking up things online and I just wasn't really finding much. So here I am, sharing my interpretation of the 3 different personalities. So the 3 personalities that I'm going to talk about today are called the visionary one, the disciplined one, and the intentional one. So starting with the visionary one is the person that wants to set like over 20 goals because they have all these ideas, they have all these visions, they have this long bucket list of all the things they want to do in life. They want to learn like 5 languages, try 10 new hobbies, do this, try this. In general, they're very quick, spontaneous. They might set a goal 1 month and then the next month it doesn't align to them anymore and they can easily let it go. Like they're very flexible with that. So that's like very much their strength, but also their weakness because yes, they follow their intuition, which at the end of the day is amazing and beautiful, but it's very hard for them to stay focused on one goal because they have a very low sense of direction and they have a shorter attention span than the other 2 personalities. They're like constantly getting a new idea and do this, and they start, and then before they have the chance to finish it, they get another idea and they just, let it go. So it is very difficult for the visionary one to prioritize usually because if you sit them down and you give them their list of their 20 plus goals and you tell them to choose their top 3, that is going to be very difficult for them and it's going to feel very limiting because for some of the other personalities, they like the idea of having a clear focus and a clear destination. But for the visionary one, it sounds hypothetically like a nice thing to have 1 or 2 focuses, but at the same time, it feels very limiting to them because they're like, how can I focus on 3 things for the rest of the year when I have so many interests, so many things I want to be doing? Moving on to the disciplined one. The disciplined one is kind of in the middle of the visionary and the intentional one in terms of how many goals they set because they would set around 10-ish goals. Obviously, this can depend, but when we're talking relatively to the visionary and the intentional, if the visionary sets 20 plus and the intentional one sets 1 to 5, the disciplined sets around 10. So the disciplined one is, like in the name, very disciplined, very ambitious, very driven, very focused on achievement. They're the ones that are able to push themselves the most through any challenges when it comes to goals. So whenever they're really not feeling like working on a goal, but they know they have to, they're the ones that are going to be the best at like forcing themselves to do that. They're also very structured. They love their routines, their plans, and they have a very clear plan on how to get where they want to go. Most of the time, they tend to focus mostly on career and health goals. And for them, their life areas are not always very balanced because those are the people that are like super super career or health driven. Like the people that are very disciplined in the gym, or the people that, you know, work really hard on their career, and you look at them and you're kind of like, how do they have so much discipline to push through? Like I could never do that. They can really push themselves in those two areas of their life usually, but if you tell them to set like a spiritual goal or a relationship goal, they usually don't see that as goals. Like for them, it seems like a waste of time to focus on that. They want like a clear milestone to be proud of. And if it's something vague, like improve my relationship with this family member, and it's not something they can measure, they're not usually gonna like that goal, because they're gonna be like, this is so vague. I can't measure this. I can't be proud of this. And yeah, they tend to be a little unbalanced in those different kind of areas of their life. But once again, their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness. So because they're so disciplined, yes, it gets them places, but they don't know where to stop. And they tend to get very burnt out, very stressed, very overworked. So for them, a lot of the time, the goal is more important than the process. And they just want to achieve the thing as quick as possible. They're usually quite impatient as well because of that. They're always on that fine line between productivity and burnout. So it can be very difficult for them to slow down because they're so like laser focused on their goal, and slowing down to them feels like a failure. The sun is starting to create like weird reflections. Okay, a little bit of a lighting change because the sun was starting to heat me and my camera up. Our last personality is the intentional one, and it is in the name once again, but they're very intentional with the goals they set. So they usually set 1 to 5 yearly goals. Like that is more than enough for them. They don't get bored of them. They don't feel like, oh my gosh, how am I limiting myself to 5 goals? Because for them, the why for these goals is very strong. The intention is really strong, and they know that doing these goals will bring them to, you know, their life vision, their long-term goals. So it's really easy for them to stay focused on those few goals because the why is so strong. And once they start and gain momentum on working on their goal, they will almost always finish through, because as you know, in goal setting, if your why is really strong, the how is really easy. But being kind of the opposite of the visionary one, for them, starting the goal is the hardest. Once they started and they have the momentum and they can see the progress, they can see that they're getting closer to their dream life, they will finish it through. But starting is really hard because usually they're kind of resistant to change, and they can also lack motivation. So starting is the hardest, but finishing the goal is the easiest. So like once they start, they got it. Whereas for example, for the visionary one, it's the opposite. They can start goals every single day. Like they have a new language they can start every day if they really wanted to. But it's finishing and following through with those goals that's hard for the visionary one. So for the intentional one, it's difficult to stay motivated and energized in the beginning. They gotta like start slower, you know, because for them, the goals might be a little bit overwhelming, but once they got it, they got it. You know? Okay, so that is a brief overview of the 3 personalities. Just a reminder though, there might be a couple of points that you didn't align with. For example, if you're thinking that you might be the disciplined one, but then I mentioned something about the fact that they usually only set career and health goals and you don't align with that, it doesn't now mean you are not the disciplined one. I'm just giving a lot of different examples in how each personality can show up, but you have to just see which one you align with most. Remember, you are a balance of all 3. You just have to figure out which one you tend to be more like specifically when setting goals. Like, yeah, they're not mutually exclusive. Just because you might be the visionary one and you set like 50 goals and you have all these ideas, it doesn't mean now that you can't have discipline. Because you're the visionary one, you're not the disciplined one. It doesn't mean you don't have discipline, because you still have a balance. But when it comes to goal setting, you know your pattern. It's about knowing how you usually set goals and then using that knowledge to figure out where your downfall in goals usually is, and then that way, using that knowledge, you can get better next year, you know, because you know your problem areas, you know where you might fall down. And another thing I want to mention, I said in the beginning of the video that I was making a Notion template for myself, but I actually ended up making 3 different Notion templates for each of these personalities. That video is gonna come tomorrow with all the different templates, because I don't know, I was just making my template for myself and I was like, there's no way this works for everyone. And I started start thinking about this whole thing, if you use Notion and you want to see how I'm planning my goals, but also how you can plan yours if you're a different personality to me, then look out for that video, because it's going to show how you can plan your goals based on which personality you are. Okay, so moving on to my advice for each of the 3 personalities, because knowing the 3 personalities and understanding where they tend to have their downfalls when it comes to goals, we can then give specific advice and tips on how to prevent that downfall. One thing I want to mention before I go into the 3 personalities is I'm going to mention a lot about goals and visions. Every single one of these 3 personalities needs a life vision, a yearly vision, and a quarterly vision, in my opinion. Visions are not technically goals, because a vision is kind of more how you want to feel, how you want your life to be, but it's not a goal. So for example, a vision might be something like, my body feels healthy and energized and I wake up with a lot of energy, and a goal attached to that vision might be start running or fix your sleeping schedule. So a goal is not a vision. So when you're setting your vision, it's more about how you want to feel rather than what you want to achieve. Whereas goals is more specific. Goals are measurable. And every single one of these personalities, in my opinion, needs a long-term / life vision, a yearly vision, and a quarterly vision. When it comes to goals, the time frame is going to be different. Okay, so based on that, let's begin with the visionary one. The first thing you're going to want to do, and you're going to want to spend a lot of time on this, you really want to focus on this, you want a really clear yearly and quarterly vision. You need to know how you want to feel, how you want your life to look like at the end of the year and at the end of each quarter. And then based on that, you're going to set short-term monthly goals, not yearly goals. Yearly goals are not going to work for the visionary because they're not going to be able to prioritize. Imagine you have a free weekend, you have some free time, and you have your list of 50 goals. What are you going to work on? How are you going to prioritize? You're going to feel so overwhelmed, and then you're just going to let everything go and end up doing nothing because you felt so overwhelmed and you were like, okay, well, I'm not going to get all this done anyway, so might as well do nothing. And it's just not going to work out well for you. So monthly goals are much better because it's easier to prioritize that way, because you set yourself a goal for the month and you're like, okay, this month I'm going to be disciplined and I'm going to focus on these 10 goals. And it gives you the possibility to actually prioritize the things you want to do this specific month, but it still gives space for your intuition and your ideas. Because if you have an idea that comes to you and you have this intuition that like, oh, I want to try this new hobby instead of my old one, you can say, look, for this month, I am committed to the goals that I set for this month. Next month, if I don't want to work on this goal anymore and I have an idea for a new one, I can change. But for this month, I'm committing. And that way, you're actually going to be making some sort of progress, because some progress is always better than no progress. And when you set yearly goals and you can't prioritize at all and you get overwhelmed and you end up doing nothing, that is no progress. So it is better to set monthly goals and achieve some progress, and then if you don't align with the goal anymore, you can set a different one for next month, than setting yearly goals and not achieving any of them. And another thing I want to say, it is extremely important for the visionary one to develop a morning and evening routine, because out of the 3 personalities, they're the ones that tend to have the least routine, because they kind of like, they wake up and go. They see how they feel. And that tends to make them feel very scattered, because they're very much up here. Like, they're in their head. They have the ideas. They're very quick. They're very up here. They're not very grounded. So it's very, very, very important for them to have a very clear morning and evening routine. It's gonna, in general, help you in life, but also with goal setting as well, because you're gonna be in the right mind space to actually work on your goals. And the reason I'm saying it for this one, obviously everyone will benefit from a routine, but the discipline one and the intentional one, they're kind of good with routines, to be honest. They kind of have a natural one. So for the visionary one, if you don't have a set routine, like if you don't have a specific sleeping schedule, if you don't have a specific thing you do in the morning that you know you wake up and you do this, then you're gonna have a lot of unknowns in your head and it's just gonna overwhelm you even more. So routine is extremely important for the visionary one to ground them. Moving on to the disciplined one, also really important to spend some extra time on the yearly and quarterly vision, because like I said, they tend to be a little bit unbalanced in the life areas. So you're gonna want to like rate all the different areas of your life. You can do like the little wheel of life and rate all the different aspects, like your relationships, your health, your career, your hobbies, the fun, how much you're traveling, whatever. And based on that, you're gonna set your vision. So it's important to be more well-rounded with your goals because they tend to, like I said, focus more on career and health. For them, midterm goals are the best. So quarterly goals would work well for the discipline one because they're a little bit too impatient for the yearly goals because they want to see their achievements quicker, but at the same time they have a little bit more discipline than the visionary one. So quarterly goals are fine for them. They need to have a really clear yearly vision though. So when you're setting your goals for the year, actually just set your vision for the year. How do you want to feel at the end of the year? Another thing I want to mention about goals is if you can, do goals that are measurable because like I said, it works much better for the disciplined one. It will keep you motivated longer. Not that you really need it because you're very driven anyway, but yeah, that's just something that's just going to motivate you even more. But something that's really important for you to implement is some sort of like work-life balance or like goal balance where you're like, okay, I need to set a clear boundary of when working on a certain goal is too much. Or you can create like a list of different ways that you can take care of yourself when you're stressed or when you're overwhelmed. For example, maybe taking a walk really helps you when you're stressed, but it doesn't really help you when you feel overwhelmed. So you can create that list of different things that help you in different feelings. And it's important to check in with this all the time. And you're not going to want to because it might feel a little bit stupid, or you're always going to feel like you need to do more. But for them, it is the most important to do like more reflections to see how they're actually feeling, if they're stressed out, if they're burnt out, because you don't want to get to that point where you're completely burnt out. Like they have such a good pace and momentum with their goals. They know how to push themselves through, but you need to know when you're pushing yourself a little bit too hard. And moving on to the intentional one, with the vision, they naturally tend to already know their vision, but I would say definitely to write it out because usually the intentional one wants to have things more simple. So I would say focus on writing your visions out because you might have them in your head, but they're probably not written out. And what I would say is long-term goals are good for the intentional one. Like yearly goals are good. If you want, you can break them down into quarterly and monthly goals, but this is kind of like a personal basis type of thing. Like you just need to see how it is for you. But I would say yearly goals are more than enough for you because like I said, you have such a strong why for them that it's going to be easy for you to get going. However, the thing that they need to focus on is they need to focus on keeping track of the next steps for each goal. So you should always know your next step for your goal because that is how you're going to keep the momentum going. If you have this huge goal in front of you and you don't know what your next action step is, it's going to be very easy for you to just be like, I'm not going to start this now. Like, I don't want to do these changes. Like, this is too much work. So you always need to know what your next action step is. So for example, when you're planning your goals, write out all the different ways you can get started. So I don't know, if you want to like open up a business, I don't know, you can have a task like brainstorm the different names, brainstorm this, do this, like research this, talk to this person, do this person. Always have a list of the next action steps. Have that as a habit of when you finish something, write out what has to be done next so that you don't break your momentum. Because once you're in your momentum, like you'll finish things because you have a strong why, but it's just that like you just don't want to stop because once you stop, that's when you're going to struggle starting again. And another thing that I would recommend for the intentional one specifically, obviously everyone can do this, but for the intentional one more than the other ones, is to have a little bucket list of things that they want to do for the year. Not a goal list, specifically a bucket list, because the intentional one really likes staying in their comfort zone. They like their routines. They like what they know. So, you know, it's good that they set 1 to 5 goals because like I said, they're very purposeful goals, but you also want to add some variety in your life, some new experiences. So I would really recommend for the intentional one to have a bucket list that they always go back to. Obviously, everybody should have a bucket list, but the intentional one, I would say like it's important to keep it front and center, you know? And I think that is it. That is my overall general advice for the 3 personalities. Once again, I made a Notion template for goal setting and task management for every single one of these. It's gonna come out tomorrow, so keep a lookout for that if you're interested. But let me know in the comments which one you align most to. I'm very curious kind of what my viewers are like, because obviously there's a balance of all the 3 personalities in the world, but I don't know, I have a very specific audience, so I'm curious which ones you guys are. And if you have any questions questions, like maybe you have like a specific thing that you have a question for and you need advice, let me know in the comments. I'm gonna reply to as much as I can. And yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found it interesting, and I wish you luck in the new year. Sending you love. Peace out.